Hello, everyone. Schmaffo and Big Hef from Daily Fantasy Rankings with the grand final edition of the DFS Down Under show. After many, many months of toying through back-to-back AFL slates, we have finally reached the pinnacle, the grand final for Saturday evening at the Gabba. As you can see, Hef is on the location tonight. This time last year, I was actually in Auckland for the grand final, and then we find ourselves Health on his little holiday. Where are you, mate?
No, I'm not in Auckland. I'll give you the tip. I'm just up the east coast here in Tassie. Beautiful little spot, Orford. That's the reason for the mood lighting in the background. Just getting away. Really wanted to focus on this grand final slate, and brought the kids with me, so there's not much focusing being done yet, but there's still plenty of time before we get stuck into a massive, massive prize pool.
Look, prize pools are record-breaking this week with DraftStars and DraftKings providing some great fantasy content. So we're going to be here to break down the game between Richmond and Geelong very shortly, so make sure you stick around for that. But before we get into the footy, there's a couple of things I want to touch on before their Hef. So first of all, DraftKings World Cup starts Thursday evening here in Australia. So by the time you watch this episode of the DFR show, we'll be underway with the PGA. But Saturday is the day that you want to be cheering on Team Australia, where we've got the MMA, the MLB, the AFL, and the EPL all in one day. So hopefully when you wake up Sunday, we're going to be qualifying for the next round. So make sure you stick to DFR Twitter socials and Facebook, but mainly on Twitter using the hashtag DK World Cup. Follow our progress. I've already submitted my PGA side for the week, so hopefully that gets up for the boys. But keep an eye on DFR for all the action there. Just quietly, the US, so let's call it celebrity DFS players have been scratching our finger why they didn't get a Guernsey here, Hef. We fielded a couple of calls from Empire Maker himself. He's already taken out his frustrations on the Twitter world and decided to go head-to-head with people, which is quite amusing. And then there's a couple of Canadians as well that are not exactly too fussed that they didn't get a Guernsey, so keep an eye on that if it comes out during the week. So,
now, sorry, also, who's Empire Maker?
Oh, that's right. Also, look, we are massive AFL fans, but we are also massive NRL fans, and also Sunday is the grand final between the Storm and the Panthers. Two of my actually favourite teams in the competition, so it's going to be quite a spectacle on Sunday. And DraftStars have popped out a $50,000 contest, which is the largest pool for an NRL game. So humble beginnings where I used to be playing $500 contests on a Sunday. Now they're $50,000, which is excellent from DraftStars, so good on for them. Tom's preview will be up on the DFR site very soon, or if not, by the time you watch this show, it will already be there. And I'll be dropping some video content on that particular match as well, so keep an eye out for that. Now, usually by this time of year, we're going to be pumping up the best Saturday in racing, or pretty much, or maybe next Saturday, but this is pretty big. Cox Plate Day at Moonee Valley. Hef is already all over the selections at Moonee Valley. If you want to check out his other content, check out the Outside Fence on YouTube. But he's going to be here for our Sports Champs selections for this week. Now, this Saturday, we thought last Saturday was huge. This Saturday is massive with a $20,000 contest with a $50 entry. Now, if you do get into this particular contest before midday on Friday, you actually receive $10 bonus back. So make sure if you want to see the show before then, jump into that. There's a whopping $250 entry for the high end of town. There's got a $10,000 pool in that one. If you not want to be giving out that type of money for the entry fee, there's a $20 tournament, which will be $7,500. $5 one as well for $7,500. There's so much contest on Sports Champs, so make sure you check them out. Mate, let's get you in here. Cox Plate Day, Moonee Valley. Now, all I've been hearing this week is, is it going to rain? It's not going to rain. You got to wait until I can't do my form yet. What's happening? Just put a finger in the line in the sand and say, this is going to win for us, viewers of the DFR show.
Oh, what 2 in a row winners you want, Smatho?
Oh, yes. When you win one, you win two.
Yes, no, just on the weather, I did get a text message actually saying that Dan Andrews has paid off the bomb to deliberately alter the weather report and say it's going to rain heavily on the weekend to stop people in Melbourne getting out and about for their long weekend. So, just if you were confused at all by the bomb seemingly getting the weather wrong every week, there's another spanner in the works, but I think that's probably a little bit far fetched, that theory. But it's going to be very hard to find a winner. I think the Cox Plate this year is really even, so how much rain the track gets, I think that's going to be crucial in trying to find the winner and how the track's playing. So I'm not going to give you the winner of the Cox Plate, Smatho, because I don't know.
Okay.
I gave you the Everest winner. I can't give you the Cox Plate winner. I will give you a couple through the day. We're going to go race 4, Ecumenical. It's also a grey, which helps if you want to try and find where it is in the run. You'll find it pretty quickly. It's been racing wide its past couple of runs against the better fillies and just keeps sticking on. It looks tough as old boots, this horse. So I think it's finally going to break through on Saturday. And then we'll jump over to race 6. I tipped this horse last time it raced on this show, Young Werter, and it was unlucky. He ran second. I think it'll be making amends on Saturday. So hopefully a couple of winners there to get you going in the $250 Sports Champs tournament that I'm sure everyone will be entering with their Everest money from last weekend.
I'll be looking forward to that because, yes, I did get a sneaky bet onto Classic Legend, and it was a very good win for that one. So make sure you get it to sportschamps.com.au. Plenty of tournaments. If we weren't talking about AFL, we'll be all over this. So actually, we might be all over it next week with the Victorian Derby coming up next week. So make sure you stick to Hef's tips. Now, it's not the final thumbs up for the year. This is the second last one. I'm going to drop a little birdie for you straight away, Hef. Next week, we'll be presenting the overall thumbs up for the year, but also known as the Thummies. So I'm gonna go back next week and find out if I actually gave some multiple thumbs up to people throughout the year. So we also be looking at the best of the best, the people who deserve the thumbs up, the people who narrowly missed out. Maybe they might get their own little mention. There's been a few cranky people this year that they thought they got the 2 thumbs up, and Smaffo didn't deliver. I will say now that I won't be giving myself a thumbie next week after giving myself the 2 thumbs up a couple of weeks ago. So, but this week's edition of 2 thumbs up, and then obviously I can't go past last Friday night where we open up the Draft Stars leaderboard in the 4th quarter. I usually look around then and look at the avatars of Stimpy 870, absolutely killing the Draft Stars leaderboard. Let me bring up your side here, Hef, so you can talk me through how did Stimpy get through to the top of the mountain, not once, not twice, 5 times in the top 10 there for us.
Yeah, he's done this before too, Stimpy. He just when it rains it pours for the Stimpmeister. Now he's got Rosie and Dersma. He was very, very heavy on those 2 cheap midfielders for Port Adelaide, and they both obviously came through with the goods there. Brad Ebert, courageous career for Ebert, finished pretty much how it's gone the whole time for him, going off with a head clash, but he's in a great career, Brad Ebert, and he stepped up to the plate there for Stimpy as well. And Big Nan Curvis going with the big ton. He was obviously a massive key. And, wow, really good side. Like he's able to... Jonas was a player we talked about being quite cheap. He's fit him in there. He's even been able to carry the down game from Shane Edwards. But overall, really consistent team and an absolute smashing of the leaderboard by Stimpy. So well deserved.
Yeah, well deserved. I do remember the Tom Jonas baking you gave last week. So obviously that just inspired our viewers to get him into your sides, wouldn't it?
Oh, you will notice he didn't go to Lynch. Lynch got stopped, but it was by the weather because you forgot to read me out the weather last week, Smatho, and I fell into Lynch. But Jonas didn't go to him.
Well, Stimpy must have looked at the weather, and it's obviously a massive payday for him.
Yes, yeah. You got to dot all the I's and cross all the T's in DFS.
Now, Stimpy, well done, mate. I know you've already got one this year, but that's just 2 thumbs up for you. That was, I think, one of your better performances in your career. Absolutely killing it. Hopefully, we might see some more DFR action on the leaderboards for this week, especially on Draft Stars. So, Hef, let's get stuck into the grand final. It is Richmond at $1.84, taking on the Cats at $2.05. These are the odds here on Thursday night here. They may be subject to change, so always check the markets before looking at your fantasy sites. Currently, the spread's 2.5 and the total's 117.5. Now, let me get the weather hat on. Let me tell you what the current weather is for Thursday night for you. So, currently it's a maximum of 29 degrees with a minimum of 19. Perfect in terms of temperature. But they say there's a slight chance of a shower in the afternoon or in the evening. Chance of a thunderstorm in the afternoon and evening. Light winds becoming northerly in the morning. Chance of rain currently at 30%. 0 to 1 mil probable rainfall.
This just sounds like what they guess for every single day in Brisbane to me. Going to be pretty hot. Could be a bit of rain. Might be a thunderstorm. They don't know.
They don't know.
Let's be honest.
Look, Gill was proudly proclaiming, like, don't worry about the weather. Stuff the weather. There's going to be a game of footy on no matter what's going to happen. So, look, yes, we did get caught out last week, but we should be okay for Saturday. Now, obviously, you can always check the weather before the game. There's a lot of pre-game coverage and stuff like that on the telly, so it's your own fault if you don't check the weather. Now, in team news, obviously, we don't have teams. We should have had the teams by Thursday night, but no, it's going to come out Friday. But
it's only the grand final, Smatho. Why would the teams be out 2 days before the game?
Why? I don't know why.
Why?
Next year, hopefully, they return to normal, but we envision there'd be no changes because there wasn't any injuries concerns out of the 2 games last week. There was no suspension, so I can't see Damien Hardwick pulling a Marlon Pickett out of his bag to play his first game. I just can't see that happening. But if it does happen, we'll make sure we make the changes on our cheat sheets before the match. So let's get on to the DFR tools. As always, dailyfantasyrankings.com.au has been your hub for AFL research this year. It's made a lot of winning lineups, either on DraftStars and DraftKings, so make sure you check out our free tools. But you'll see straight away that we've been pumping up Richmond in the rucks in the last couple of weeks. Nankervis has been a great ruckman, but he's just leaking fantasy points to the opposition ruckman, and it's no different in the last couple of weeks. However, he did score 106 fantasy points last week against the Lions, so you might be thinking again that Nankervis does have a great ceiling. Also, the Cats concede the least amount of possessions in the league while scoring the second highest in disposals. So they don't allow fantasy points, and then they have a lot of possessions. So that is going to be the thing in your mind as you make your lineups this week. It's quite simple. So, Hef, the grand final, last prelim finals were pretty hard to break down in terms of fantasy, but I think this one's going to be a little bit more simpler than usual. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Yes, I think from a fantasy perspective, it's going to be the Cats trying to control the ball and the Tigers trying to hit them on the turnover. Now, while I'm treating myself as an icy pole and trying to lick myself to death, I did say a few weeks ago there were 2 chances to win this year's grand final. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. You said Geelong and Richmond and then someone else.
Geelong and Richmond, and it looked absolutely horrible when they both lost first week, but they've both got here. I've been in the Richmond corner, and I'm going to stay in the Richmond corner. I think they will be the premiers again. Especially if the conditions get slippery. If we do get that thunderstorm or any sort of rain or dew or anything like that, I think that plays into Richmond's hands. But I think the Cats will really stretch them, but I think Richmond will just have too many guns.
Now, before we break down this particular match, I did fail to talk about the fantasy sites. And this is pretty important. You know, this is the lifeblood of daily fantasy players. Like, what kind of pools you're playing for. And we're going with DraftStars, the largest online pool ever put out to the public. $150,000 GPP contest. It is a $20 entry, but this is the grand final. This is where you want to be winning this one. $15,000 on top. I do hope they fill the pool for this one because they have had a fantastic year DraftStar. They deserve to have the community just to go whoosh on this one so that in future we can come back in 2021 and play for these massive pools in the future. Now, DraftKings have also put up a $10,000 one, and look, I'll be quite enthusiastic to get into that one as well because look, it's American dollars. It's a good exchange rate. It's at 9 as well, so you're going to have a lot of international players going to be playing it as well. So if you want to find out if you want to be better than the world at the moment, DraftKings is the place to be as well. So, all right, so you've got two options. There is a third option on DraftKings with Noah Bolter, but we believe he's probably not fantasy relevant in this position. So it is Reece Stanley versus Toby Nankervis. Nank scored 76 fantasy points in their round 17 matchup versus the Cats, but Reece Stanley didn't play that game. But Mark Blixarve scored 94. So that just backs up the data. So they're priced the same. There is a slight edge to Stanley in terms of his price. On DraftKings, there is a bit of a price discrepancy with Nankervis at 6,700 and Reece Stanley at 6,000, which pretty much makes Stanley an automatic play on that particular site. So what are you thinking for Draft Stars when this one's a coin flip in terms of pricing?
I'm actually leaning to Nankervis. Smith, I know what data is. We can't just agree on everything all night, Smitho. We've learned that that's it makes for even worse TV than what we put out usually. But it's just something about Nankervis as the lone ruck. Obviously, these stats are they do have a lot of soldo in them. The double sort of combo that the Tigers have run during the year, but I just think that Nankervis, he loves being the one out ruck. He seems to step up in these big games, and he has just defeated the power combo of Lysett and Laddams, who admittedly has run out of puff a bit the last month or two of the season. But let's not get carried away with Reece Stanley. He's teased us on and off over the past couple of years. We have fallen into him a few times, but Stanley can give up points as well. And there's just something about the way Nankervis can stand up. He takes important marks. He kicks important goals. I actually have him as my favourite sneaky for the Norm Smith Nankervis. So I hope that people are going to go with the data and own Stanley more than Nankervis, because I would actually take Nankervis if I had a gun to my head.
Geez, I'm looking for like a hose or a bucket of water here, because that is a very, very hot take from you that Nankervis is just going to be stepping on the dice with two medals around his neck.
Well, he was just lion-hearted. There could be a bit of recency bias here, Smatho, because he's coming off the big ton. But interesting that when these two teams played, it wasn't that long ago. I'm pretty sure I potted Nankervis in that game, and then Salvo got injured, and Nankervis took over from about the second quarter and led the Richmond side in fantasy points. So, I'm a big rap for Nankervis. I think he's going to step up with some really important marks and plays in this match, and he might not get off to a great start, and you might get a little bit nervous, but he'll just keep on coming. Just like a good stayer, he'll just keep on coming and finding the line, Nankervis. So Stanley's obviously playable. You're telling everyone he's a lock, so your minions will be piling into him. I've got nothing against playing Stanley. I just think I would prefer to go with my old mate Toby.
Okay, yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind it, especially on Draft Stars where you can have either or. But I just can't pass up that $700 saving on DraftKings, unfortunately. I can save it on Noah Bolter, but I'm not going to be...
Noah Bolter is very relevant in this game, but not for himself, if you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. All right, let's move on to defence. And, we want cats. We want cats here. I know it's quite easy to roster some great Tiger options in like Short and Pasha Bully and stuff like that. But I'm a big believer of the data here. So, sure, we had Tom Stewart was restricted to 55 last week. Zach Tilley's been thrown up forward and only had a 50, back-to-back 50s and that. But I really like him here. Jesse likes him on his preview article where like the guys like Mike O'Connor or Henry or Colin Dashney or even Henderson or Blickfast can play that chippy round the back. Tigers will let him do it. And... I think I'm all over the cats here. I don't care if they're cheap or expensive, but you're gonna tell me otherwise, aren't you?
Smatho, we've got a max entry on Draft Stars, 225. We're going to have to do something different if we're going to take home the number one prize. Now, what you say about Geelong, I can't disagree with. I actually love Tom Stewart in this spot. We've polled into Stewart a few times in recent times. We sort of avoided him a little bit last week. That's without me going back and watching the tape where I probably tipped him in. But I think we can see, if you go to our data tools, you'll see Richmond are giving up points to especially the main backman. Stewart fits the bill there. So I've got nothing against playing the Cats backs. I think Cats trying to control the ball, that will be a bit of a feature of the game. But I'm going to throw a little theory at you about the Tigers. If you want to go a bit different and you want to play Tigers backs, the thing about Geelong is they're very, very good at shutting down the opposition when they're trying to switch play in the back half. They give up the least uncontested ball, basically, of any team in the comp. I think if you're going to go play Richmond, everyone sort of leans towards Jaden Short, Basher Hooley as the obvious defenders to play. But I think those players are really hurt by Geelong's style of restricting that uncontested ball. And if I'm going to go different and play some Tiger backs, I'm going to look at Nick Vlaston and I'm going to look at Dylan Grimes, because I think they're both good intercept marks. They don't rely as much on getting the uncontested ball as the likes of Hooley and Short. So both had really good games from a fantasy perspective last time these two teams played, especially Grimes. Grimes was superb. He's quite cheap there too at 8,000 Grimes, and I think they're going to be under-owned. So if you want to look a bit contrarian, they're the two guys I want to look at. I also want to mention Harry Taylor. How popular do you think Harry Taylor is going to be now? He's down to 6,000.
He'll be the casual popular. He'll be like, oh, Harry Taylor, 6K, yes, thanks, no worries. We've got him projected for 35 fantasy points, but still has him one of the top value players of the slate. I mean, it's not great. It's still like 5.7x on DraftStars. On DraftKings, he is at 3,200, which is probably Dylan Grimes at 3.7. I'll probably go to him instead, maybe in Collar Dashing at 3.9. But the casual player will definitely go to him, and there will be some ownership.
Well, people will be looking to spend up on the big names, Dusty, Danger, Nankervis. But so I think Taylor will come into play there. I can't really pot him at 6,000. Taylor, last time they played, he had about 50, and you do know that the Geelong chipping around the back line, he only has to get involved 3 or 4 times, and he's hit value already for you at that price.
One guy I want to talk about on the Tigers side that will probably be highly owned is Shane Edwards. He's getting centre bounce appearances, but his fantasy scoring is a bit of a yo-yo at the moment. So he's gone 70, 36, 76, and 40 last weekend. I mean, if you want to play the pattern, yeah, sure, he'll go up again. But this Cats midfield / fantasy scoring restriction has got me a little bit scared. But he's a bit of a, he's an enigma at under 10K where you can chuck him in your backline, but maybe pop him in as your fourth midfielder. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, he's definitely in play for me, Shane Edwards. I've talked him up as a big game player, and we have seen him come to the party with 70-odd a couple of weeks ago there when they knocked off whoever it was they knocked off. I can't remember. The Saints.
Yeah.
But he is volatile, but it's the volatile players that are going to win you a slate here. He is probably going to be pretty popular at that price tag, but and you do go in knowing that he doesn't have fantasy at the forefront of his mind. Edwards, obviously not many of them are going to. It's a grand final, but he's very happy to do the selfish things for the team, the tap-ons, the shepherds. He's very much part of the structure, but I think you've got to have some exposure to Edwards just because he's getting all that time in the middle of the ground. He still had, I think he was about 50% in the centre bounces, even still on the weekend. So, obvious play, Shane Edwards, but not one you really want to put all your teams into, I don't think.
Okay, cool. Would you play him in your mid or one of your defensemen if you're playing a
looking at the builds, I think he ends up in your mids probably more often. But there's actually a few more cheaper options here than what we've been putting up with in recent weeks. In other games, I think we've had to play him through the midfield as you try and save some money. But yeah, I think it just comes down to your builds, whether you want to go with if you've got some cheap backs or cheap forwards, you can use him as a back. But if you want to spend up in the mids, you might have to use him as a mid.
Fair enough. All right, let's talk about the mids then. And this is a very, very plain picture here. If you look at the cheat sheets on the DFR website, you'll see straight away that you've got a stack of cats up towards the top, and then obviously your tigers sitting underneath that. So clearly, well, let's say I can say clearly if you want, but surely you want to be having your cat mid stacks in here. Menegola, Duncan, Selwood, Guthrie. Like, even a bit of Dangerfield. Look, you probably want to save Danger for your forward line if you're playing him. Even Parfitt, etc. They're all very, very good fantasy scoring midfielders that you want. Who are you most excited in terms of this midfield group that you?
I think you know. I think you know who I'm most excited for, Smatho.
Yep, you want the pig, don't you? Want the little Guff pig.
Guff Pig. Yeah, I love Guff Pig. And Richmond, well, obviously we saw what happened last time these two teams played. They don't care for Guthrie. Not many teams do. He just run around. We've known all year that the high scoring midfielders can just go big against Richmond. And on the flip side, well, Geelong aren't giving up points to the midfielders. They're definitely cutting down on the ones that want to get the cheap uncontested ball. So if you are going to play a Tigers midfielder, I'm more leaning to the guy like Prestia and Dusty Martin, the guys that are going to be around the ball. Well, Dusty doesn't matter where he is; he's a freak. But yeah, more so than the outside runners like a McIntosh and Pickett. They're very tempting to try and save some money with. Lambert's another one, but they do rely on getting uncontested possessions, and they just don't come against Geelong. So I'll be heavy on Geelong in my midfield. Guthrie's my main one, but I've got no real issue with targeting any of those guys through Selwood, Parfitt, Duncan, Menegola, Dangerfield. I think they're all in reasonable spots against Richmond. So yeah, I'll be very keen to have the majority of Geelong midfielders through my middle of the ground. We can look back to the last couple of times they've played. Even when they've lost Geelong, they still have dominated the fantasy scoring through the middle of the ground against the Tigers.
Yeah, I'm looking at round 17 at the moment. Guthrie of 113. Duncan only had 71. And Dangerfield only had 66. And Menegola only had 67. So they can bust you. But there's always seemed to be one or two that will go beyond the projected score of 75-80. So I wouldn't put a line through all the Cats players. They might bust a couple. But it'd be hard to find a case for Tigers mids, though. Like Cochin and Prestia are cheap. Like Cochin's at 10.7 here on DraftStars.
I quite like Prestia at his price. He's my favourite. Jack Graham's one that I'm a bit wary of. When you can pay 12.5 for Prestia and you've got to pay 11,000 for Jack Graham, he's just been squeezed out of the midfield. Graham. We know he has had a big grand final before against Adelaide a few seasons back, but they're pretty settled through the middle of the ground, and it's Martin, it's Prestia, it's Tichy Edwards getting that time in there, and there's not much left for Jack Graham in the centre bounces.
If you find yourself you only got 10k left for your last midfield spot, your options are Shane Edwards, Simpson, or Marlon Pickett. Out of those three, who would you have?
Edwards.
Yeah, but
Edwards has got the upside. Ever since that first game where we potted Sam Simpson, he had 100. He hasn't gone above 66, which would be a reasonable return. But if I had to peg him on a number, it'd be around the 50 mark, and I just don't think there's the upside. At least playing Edwards, you've got upside. He might hurt you, but he can win you a slate, Edwards. Marlon Pickett, I said before, I'm not really looking to play these outside sort of players against Geelong. It's been just poison all year, and I don't see any reason that's going to change in a grand final.
So if you find yourself a pick in your side, you might have to start again. Is that what you're saying?
No, never start again. You can always, how you win these big slates, Smatho, is you get a team you like, and then you got one guy left, and I would never recommend starting again if it's just one guy left, because you need some luck, and it's usually going to come from a guy that you wouldn't usually play. So if you've got two guys you don't like, then maybe start again.
All right, so after loading our midfields up with Geelong Cats, we need to find some value in the forwards. Look, I want to touch on the three guys who are priced around the same on Draft Stars, which is Dustin Martin, Patrick Dangerfield, and of all people, Tommy Hawkins. Geez, Tommy Hawkins is going to be a very, very lone play if you had the choice between those three, but he could be the one who could take you to the promised land. Do you have the peanuts to play, mate?
No.
No.
No, I didn't mention. Well, it's a grand final. It's you got to be different somewhere. I can't be playing Hawkins here at that price. I did mention that Noah Bolter, I thought he was fantasy relevant, and this is why I think he's fantasy relevant. I think he's just an unbelievable athlete, Noah Bolter. He can match Hawkins in the physical department, and I think that's really going to make it hard for Hawkins to hit value at that price.
We do have him projected for 74 fantasy points, which is just a rung below Martin and Dangerfield. So he's going to pop if you use an optimizer or a cruncher. So he's going to be thereabouts. And then you've got a good set of players around the 10, 11K mark, which you probably want to be targeting as your second or even your first forward here if you don't have the money for a higher guy. So I'm looking at here Dan Rioli, Zach Tui, Parfitt, Myers, even Gary Ablett's in this range. These are yeah.
You've missed one.
Oh, who have I missed?
Shea Bolton.
Look, I'm not really high anymore. He's not getting the CBAs anymore because.
No, he isn't. But
yes, on a stage, there's the grand final. You usually have a player that goes bananas, goes absolutely nuts. Like we've seen it before. I'm not sure about Bolton.
I'm not saying Bolton's a great player but he's in the mix with those other games that you name. The last 2 weeks we've seen a massive hit to his centre bounces, so that's worth talking about. So
yeah,
but that has resulted in his price coming down a bit too, and he seems like he's the type of guy that can step up in a game like this, Bolton. And if they do throw him in the middle a bit more to try and get the team going or something like that. But I'm actually quite happy playing Gary Ablett here. We've talked a lot about my theories on beating Essendon, and you've got Richmond. Don't know how I brought Essendon into the conversation there, but to beat Richmond, you've got to be very good at not wasting the ball going forward. And if there's one guy who's very good at doing that, it's Gary Ablett. Don't worry about his couple of low games he had. Collingwood, once the game was over, he wasn't interested. We saw last week with Gary's game against Brisbane that he's still got what it takes. He had 75 there, a couple of goals. He just looks cherry ripe. He's had that time off during the year. Cherry ripe here for the grand final, $10,000 salary. I think he's really well placed here. And trying to find a guy against Richmond, they can give up points to the smaller forwards at times. I'm really happy playing Gary Ablett at 10,000.
Geez, we've got Nankervis and we got Gary Ablett as your two strong plays for. I like it, Hef. This is going to be a nice looking side that you're going to compile here for Saturday. But there's one guy that I want to bring up, and you bring it up pre-show that you're kind of pretty strong on. His last two games, 51 fantasy points, and then a 24-point stinker last week, 8,980. Jason Castagna.
Yeah, I did mention I'm not a real rap for him, Castagna. He makes a lot of mistakes with the ball, but you can't deny that he knows how to get involved in the play, Castagna. Obviously, he didn't too much last week against Port. I'm never really going to hold a score against Port against anyone because they can be really stingy, especially against the small forwards. I think Geelong are gettable by a small forward. Earlier in the year, he bobbed up and he had 60, which at 9K is more than good enough in this slate. He's not a guy that I want to be piling into, Castagna, but he does have the ability to get 60 or 70. And if Richmond do get away, he does run it out right to the end. He can bob up for a couple of junk time goals that might just be enough to get you over the line. But just from a value perspective, and given his ability to sort of go well over his value if he has a good game, through gritted teeth, I'm playing Castagna.
Very good, very good. All right, before we wrap up the show, I'm just going to quickly go through my featured DraftKings players, the players I'm going to be looking in my DraftKings World Cup side coming up on Saturday. I'm not playing Gary Rowan. He's one of the highest value guys on the slate at 4,200. He might sink me. He might burn a lot. So that's the risk you're going to take. I'm not playing Gary Rowan. I like Blixars at 5.2. I like Shane Edwards at 4,800. I've also like Selwood as well through the bidfield. I'm also liking Cam Guthrie if I can get him in. And obviously going to play Stanley in the ruck. So I'll try and link up some cheap Geelong bats with this Stanley and then and fading Rowan. So hopefully that would lead us to a good win on DraftKings. Now, before we wrap up this grand final edition of the DFR DFS Down Under show, we haven't been doing many of these predictions through the year, Hef, but as tradition, I suppose, everyone has a tip for the grand final, by how much, and a Norm Smith winner. So I've got you go through the markets just now and layers on your predictions for the grand final. What's going to happen here?
I'm going to say that Richmond are going to get over the top of Geelong by 17 points. I think Dusty will win the Norm Smith, but my roughie will be Toby Nankervis.
And how much is Toby Nankervis? He is 67 on the sites at the moment. So,
how could you go past Dusty for winning the Norm Smith? He's very short in Norm. When you think of Norm Smith betting, you think, oh, well, you got to get some guy at some decent value. But if you think Richmond are going to win like me, how often do Richmond win and Dusty's best on ground? I think, I wouldn't be opposed to taking short odds, Dusty Martin.
Well, I'm going to be on the Cats, a little bit shorter margin. I'm going to be here at 9 points. I think they score a couple of late goals late to break it open. My Norm Smith is going to go to one of my favourite players for the Cats team. That's Mitch Duncan at 15. It's a little bit of value there. I think he gets his name in the lights. I know he's a bit of more of an outside player, but I think he's cherry ripe for this particular match. So I'll go the Cats by 9 or 4 for Saturday. Now, as I said, Hef and I will be back next week with the grand final review. Hopefully, I'll be giving up 2 thumbs up to one of our DFR members as well, and also we'll break down some huge racing next Saturday. As always, can you drop us a like on YouTube? Like this video. I'm going to be posting this video on all of our socials, including Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Hef, is there any final thoughts before we wrap up the show?
I'm out. I'm out of the gold stuff, Smatho. But really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a cracking grand final. Now,
thanks for joining me in your exclusive holiday location. And we look forward to catching all of our viewers next week on the DFS.
I'll put the Marvin Gaye back on now, Smatho.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, Hef. Good luck at the grand final. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
See you, mate. Bye.